Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Crucible Bootcamp. I'm your host, King Koala, and today we're going to be looking at a skirmish match on Rusted Lands. The user that sent me in the footage, his name is TechDocD. He has his own Twitch channel. It's probably just TechDocD, but I'll link it in the description. And he's playing Striker, and he's using a Scout and a Sidearm. So I haven't really gone over any kind of Sidearm play, so I'm pretty excited to go over this. It's definitely a very different loadout and a very different play style to be successful with a Scout Rifle and a Sidearm. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So we're going to see him load up into Rusted Lands. So the interesting thing about Scouts and Sidearms is that there's no way for you to one-hit anything, right? You don't have a shotgun, you don't have a sniper, so there's no way for you to effectively shut down supers without creating a lot of space between you and your opponents. So you see already he just pushes forward with his sidearm. He does the issue with running this kind of loadout where you're vulnerable for long periods of time because you have to commit to fights. You do end up getting a lot of your engagements do end up resulting in trades more often than not. Because of how exposed you are as you move around. So you see he got flux grenaded right off the bat right there. It's important to keep in mind, I know he's playing with two people, but it's important to keep in mind that what your opponents are capable of doing at the beginning of the match, especially when they have all of their abilities up. So you see him, he gets the quick sidearm kill and he immediately backs off. This is really good wraparound. This is something that you can do as a Titan because of how fast you are. In general, if you're playing as a Striker Titan, especially if you use Overload as your melee, you want to try to get off at least one shot with either your primary or secondary. Especially in this case, if you get one shot off with a sidearm, it's a body shot, it's going to be about 40 damage. So that coupled with Stormfist proc, which is 158, it'll result in a kill against low armor guardians. So you should get in the habit, if you do end up using a sidearm as a striker, to know how many bullets it'll take to kill someone when your abilities are up. And when you know that your abilities aren't up, you need at least two body shots, because it's going to be 122. So you see that he doesn't push in for these engagements. He just waits for the opponent to push back out. So he got two shots off of him, but because that pushes through a choke point, you don't really have a good angle to go bull rushing right forward in order to finish them off. Because if he has a shotgun there, then he could be baiting you into that door. And if he's baiting you into the door, you're just going to immediately die. You're not going to have enough time to get one or two shots off. But if you do use this kind of loadout, this is exactly what you want to do. You want to hang back with your teammates and team shot and force them into sight lines where it's really easy for you to get off multiple shots. This style of play is drastically different than what I tend to tell people most of the time, just because their loadout it can encourage different ways to push the game. A loadout like a sidearm and a scout, you have to constantly create that gap between you and your opponent where both of your guns are going to be effective. So you need to keep them at least medium distance, mid-range, so that way your scout's going to be effective. And if they do decide to push you, then you can backpedal with your sidearm just like you would the last word and just gun them down. So he ends up trying to skate out here to challenge and just immediately gets domed. It's important to keep in mind, if you are going to challenge a sightline you know is long, remember that you have to be aware of which gun you have out. Like, where are you actually going to be able to realistically engage with the gun you have out? It's little things like that you have to keep in mind. So you see they get a wipe, and then he's just covering suicide. You can't push through suicide like that with this loadout, because you're going to get shotgunned on the other end. When you push out, he pushed up like this when it was safe, so that way the gap that he has to close to actually challenge is really low. Immediately disengages, which is nice. You need to be disengaging a lot with this kind of loadout. Because again, you have to expose yourself to fire to challenge people properly. You need to be just like you would use a hand cannon, you need to be dipping in and out of cover to get the most out of your sidearm. So there are a lot of pros to using loadouts that aren't one-hit kills, and one of the biggest ones is just it does, like I said earlier, it does encourage you to stick with your teammates. So at no point are you really going to see him kind of go off on his own, because he's more effective as a teammate protecting his snipers and his shotgunners with his loadout by priming targets for them, as opposed to trying to be a slayer and just bull rushing forward, trying to be a disruptor, either one of those, slayer or disruptor, pushing forward or pushing around and try to get free kills on his own. You're gonna hear that in the video, a Sunbreaker pops his hammer, and he tells him immediately. He tells him, "Hey, you know, you saw him just smash the blade to him. Hey, run away, run away, run away." If you're on a team and you don't have any supers up, the best way to challenge a super is to pull them through around corners or through tight spaces so you can team fire them. Where they are on Poba, around that corner there, it's completely open, and by the time the guy pulls around the corner, that particular corner, you're not going to be prepared for him to challenge properly. You don't have a very long sight line on your sniper, and it's pretty dangerous to challenge Sunbreakers with shotguns because of how Suncharge works. So he makes a good play to run away. Unfortunately, his teammates just kind of wait around. In this particular instance, it would have been better to either all three of them challenge or all three of them run away. The split here just resulted in the entire team wipe anyway, which is just a good super on the opponent's team's part. But you can see he's not up in these shotgun areas, so he has a lot of options, hanging back and trying to prime people for his teammates. As soon as he hits the super, this is good, he goes to support, and he has a really nice challenge there. When you use a scout rifle, because the power or the effective range of a scout rifle is medium to long distance, you can basically use it in the same way as a sniper rifle. The issue that you'll find if you challenge other snipers with a scout rifle is that the lower impact scout rifles don't cause as much flinch, and it basically forces you to have to hit all headshots if you're going to properly challenge a sniper, because you could potentially not flinch them enough and they'll still kill you or double body shot you. The advantage of using a high impact scout like he is, this is a Call of Vance's duty, the advantage of that is flinch is based on two things. It's based on the direction you're hitting someone at and the amount of damage that you're doing to them. The most flinch that you're going to experience as a player is when your shield breaks. So after that initial, I want to say it's 75 to 100 damage. After that initial damage goes through and they've broken the shield, then the amount of flinch you can inflict on them is only going to be as good as if you hit headshots or not. That's why things like auto rifles aren't good at challenging snipers, because the amount of flinch it causes is very low. It looks like a lot because of how many bullets are hitting you, but if you actually watch the reticle, it doesn't move all that much. So it's pretty hard to challenge someone with low impact weapons as opposed to high impact weapons. You want most damage per bullet when flinched. And so the other thing, like I said earlier, is direction. So if you're challenging someone head on, the flinch isn't going to be as severe as if you're hitting them from the side or from behind. That's why it's important when you see a sniper, if they're already hard scoped by the time you show up, it normally isn't good to continue to challenge them. It's normally in your best interest to turn around and go find another lane, hopefully beside them or behind them, in order to challenge them. It's okay that they've cut off that lane of traffic, but by you challenging them in that lane, you're basically playing into the power of a sniper rifle and not necessarily playing into having a proper challenge. If you have to challenge, maybe that's just your role in this particular situation. You're the guy distracting him, challenging up front while your teammates flank. Then you want to slide or jump. In the case of the scout rifle, you don't want to jump to challenge. You want to slide. And that's because you lose basically all accuracy once you're in the air, unless you're running Icarus, and even then, it's not that great on a scout. So if you slide, then you can start firing as you slide with perfect accuracy. So that's why we slide to challenge snipers as a scout rifle as opposed to jump. If you had a hand cannon, a long-range hand cannon, let's say you were using Thorn, then you would jump. Either way, you want to disrupt the enemy team's or the enemy player's vision and the fact that maybe they won't have an immediate headshot on you if you just walk into the sniper lane. So he picks up heavy here, and it's Thunderlord, which is obviously it's a very good machine gun. But when you use a machine gun, you tend to want to, like his normal loadout, is keep that space, keep that engagement distance. You're going to shine in medium range because it's difficult to hit a snipe. It's really easy to flinch someone in medium range, and you don't want to get pushed by a shotgun. So basically, about the same range that you would feel comfortable firing your scout is where you want to fire your machine gun. What you don't want to do is push through these choke points like this into areas where you have no idea what's going where. So he kind of just pushes out and dies for free. He could have, with heavy especially, he could potentially flank around through C and come behind the enemy and just gun him down. Or not even necessarily challenge with his heavy, but with his scout. Remember that he has the ability to continue to have those long sight lines. So he saw that his teammates were dead, and he just waits, because he knows that they're on the other side of suicide. You don't always have to act like you have somewhere to go. Especially if you start, if you feel like the pace of the game is kind of running out of control, just take a beat off spawn, remember where they were, and either wait for them to push into you, or when they don't push into you, push around safely. So, as we use this loadout, some other things we need to keep in mind are, in addition to when is it good and when is it bad, but when are we most vulnerable with this kind of loadout? And our biggest issues with this loadout, like I said earlier, are challenging snipers in very long range, because the time it's going to take for you to reset your shot or get your headshots off, you're probably going to get double body shotted or just domed completely. And also when someone pushes you through cover as a shotgunner. If they push you out of cover, it's really easy to backpedal with your sidearm and gun them down, just like you would the last word. But if they're pushing through cover and covering and closing that gap completely safely, and you have no shot on them before they're in one-hit KO range, you're going to die 9 times out of 10. It's going to be on them to actually just straight up miss their shot or be disoriented. So that's a huge issue with using sidearms against shotguns. Like, yes, the gun is very good against shotguns, just like the last word is very good against shotguns. But it's only going to be as effective as your ability to put shots on that person before they get within one-hit KO range. So that means you have to be very, very aware of your surroundings and where your cover is, and kind of get in the mind. I talk about this a lot lately, but if you want to really get good at, or really improve and see yourself improve, you have to think how your opponent thinks. You can't just think, okay, I'm in the ideal situation for someone to push straight at me. Like, that's fine, but what if your opponent never pushes straight at you? What if they're constantly pushing you from behind, or if they're constantly pushing you from the side? Then you need to readjust and think, okay, if they're going to push me from the side, I need to be in this location here, because then it's just going to be as if they were pushing straight ahead into me. So you want to create the situation where you're strong, even though the opponent is doing whatever they want to do. So the most important space to control in this loadout is going to be medium range. And that means, like here, you don't want to move into people. You constantly want to either stay still if you have a lot of time, or you're just not comfortable with your gun skill as you move, or you want to be backpedaling. Ideally, you want to be backpedaling because you want to continue to create that gap to stay safe. So how do we push with this kind of loadout? Pushing, I think, is something that a lot of people only understand one version of pushing, and that's the hyper-aggressive, I'm going to kill you off of spawn kind of pushing, and not like the kind of pushing that results in getting an angle on someone, which is something that a lot of people talk about, but it's not exactly defined very well. So when you push, the entire point of a push is to limit the movement options of your opponent. It's not to kill them off spawn. It's to create situations where it's going to be advantageous for you to get first shot off. You're going to create good situations where you can challenge and be safe afterwards. It's going to be, you want to create situations where it's hard to return fire. And there's just another example of, if you don't hit your headshots, they probably didn't get flinched enough. And there is that time between shots to reset the reticle. So that's just one of the issues. But when you push with any kind of loadout, you want to, if the point is to limit your opponent's options for movement, you have to realize how that synergizes with your loadout. So let's take a shotgun say you're running shotgun hand cannon for your first loadout. So the best way to push to limit options is going to be close medium range to close range, right? Close medium range is like the power position for hand cannons. You start to get damage fall off, I would say about the last quarter of medium range. And so because it's so easy to just backpedal out of medium range to cause damage drop off on a hand cannon, I would say you want to aim for close medium range as you push. So that means if you're Titan, you're basically skating to exactly where you think they're going to spawn and the first place you think they're going to move to. And that's going to limit how far they can move, right? So they can't move very far, but you limit their options, but you also have to spend a lot of time setting up to get there in the first place, which is why Titans are arguably the best shotgun class for pushing, because you're so fast. They don't have much time off spawn. So now think about a sniper. So let's say you're using an auto rifle and a sniper. So the auto rifle is going to be really good in close to close mid range, right? About the same engagement range as a hand cannon. So you probably need to push really close if you want to challenge with your primary. If you want to challenge with your secondary, though, you know that a sniper is good from medium to long range. So if you want to challenge with your sniper, you don't have to push as far. The difference is, because you don't push as far, you give the enemy team a lot of options for movement. So it's safer for you, but it's also safer for the opponent, because they're going to have ways to move around the map. They can basically slow down, and that's a point of contention and a point of a lot of frustration for players. Because you'll find that from lower skilled players that they're constantly going to be kind of whining about hard scoping, right? And the reason people end up hard scoping and get an opportunity to hard scope is because you gave them too many options to set up. You gave them too much time to move around the map or to play however you want them to. So in those kind of situations, that's when we want to be aggressively pushing with our primary. And not worry about our secondary, knowing that they're going to play completely passively, right? If we know that they're just going to sit in their spawn or off spawn and just hard scope, whether this could be in this can be in 3s, this can be in 6s, this can be in trials, whatever. If we know they're just going to sit around, it's on us to limit their options and to limit the angles that they're going to be effective in. On Rusted Lands, for example, if we take Water Tower to the back truck, we can effectively give them that sightline and move around it. So they're going to stay hard scoped, right? But it's your job to ignore it completely and to give them an angle that maybe they're not comfortable with, or maybe that you are more comfortable with. And that's going to be an effective push. If you just move around, let's say you go to B and you cut off any push through rubble, the back little slope, which I'll show the map after this, but the back little slope, if you push up to cover the slope, you've effectively cut off that avenue of moving around the map. And potentially, if they push into you, anyone that was covering that initial 50-50 where they're already hard scoped, now that opens up as a traffic lane so they can push forward and you can continue to create pressure on your opponent. That's an effective push. You didn't necessarily need to kill them at all. You just needed to uproot them or make them uncomfortable from wherever they were. So with Scout Sidearm, you want to, if you want to challenge with Sidearm, you need that close medium range, medium to close medium range. And most importantly, you need to be able to escape. You need to be able to back up. You can't push to the point where you don't have a good escape route anymore. And if you want to challenge with primary, with Scout Rifle, especially if they're hard scoping, you got to stick to that medium range. You can't afford to challenge from long range against sniper rifles because it's just going to be too easy for them to reset a shot or run away without you really killing them or really getting much out of it. So he had a really good game this game. He made a lot of really good pushes and some good plays. His movement around this map and his ability to space was really why he did so well in this game. But as you can see, he did end up dying 11 times, and every death is a mistake on your part. You either pushed too far into them, or you pushed incorrectly. Maybe you didn't account for a super. You can always make those situations better. I mean, that's how people end up with 25 kill streaks or going unbroken. It's because they didn't make mistakes, or the mistakes they did make wouldn't have resulted in a death. But really my major critique is just, if you are going to use one of these loadouts where you can't challenge in one-hit spaces, you have to be very, very aware of the spacing that you have between you and your opponents. And if I was him, I would have liked to see much more aggressive pushes for those angles that I was just talking about. So let's talk about some of the pushes that you're going to make using this loadout to be effective. So, like I said, let's say they're hard scoping down on beach. Let's say we just spawned up, so this is the beginning of the game. So we know that the most common sight line is obviously this sight line here. Beach to water tower-ish, out to the truck, right? That's going to be the most common sight line. And if we're using Scout Sidearm, we want that medium range. So medium range is going to be about here, right? This is going to be a medium range or a medium long range. I would say that's medium range. So, because that's just about the drop-off of hand cannons. So in this medium range, how do we push around the map in order to create that spacing? Well, the first way we can do that is going to B. And that's going to create a close, this is about medium long range engagement onto rubble. Another spot is on B. This one is a little bit more straight up. So this one, being unbroken and shooting down into rubble is going to tend to be shooting at your opponent from an angle beside them. But the advantage of being unbroken is that you're much safer with this challenge. There's really only two ways you can get challenged here, right? You can only get challenged from POBA over here, which is very televised, and they're going to be completely open. There isn't a lot of space to move back into cover, and if they do move back into cover, they become very vulnerable to grenades. And the other one is here, around rubble, and this is going to be straight up. And again, very televised. If someone pushes into you, it's going to be very obvious. Even if they decide not to push either of those, this push through heavy is still at medium range. If they decide to push up beach onto back broken and through to challenge you on B broken, you're still at that medium range. You could potentially switch to your sidearm and continue to backpedal. So this spot here is really, really nice. It's very safe, and everything pushing into you is very televised. So this is a strong location, and then you can make variations on this one. When you when you challenge from locations, you can challenge from the same location and make slight changes on it, so that way you're slightly unpredictable. So one spot can be just here on the obvious spot. Another spot could be actually on the wall, or on this wall, or behind this the rubble here. Any of these 4 positions, you get all the same sight lines, but you're challenging from a different elevation, a different location altogether. The point is to confuse your opponent, so they don't know where to look the next time they're there. So the other spot, if you want to challenge someone out on beach and you want them to move, is here on this L, in the center of the L, unbroken building. This one's a little bit riskier because, like I said, it is a straight up sight line here. It's also vulnerable to anyone pushing up here. But it is protected from someone in POBA, which isn't that big of a deal because, like I said, there's no real cover over here. So this cutting this off isn't a huge advantage. The difference that this location has over the back of Broken is that anyone trying to push you through Suicide Tunnel, you can gun down really easily with a sidearm. Because you're going to see them about as they come through the door. The only issue you might have is you're going to have to get aerial from this position, because if you backpedal, you're going to create a pseudo cover for them. Because if they're here, let's change colors real quick. If they're here, and you backpedal here into the back of Broken, you can't see them anymore. It's effectively going to put them into cover. And it's going to ruin every chance that you had to just kill them, because you're likely going to have 2, possibly 3 shots on them as they come out of this tunnel. But it's still unsafe to just straight up challenge while not moving. You still want to be strafing, you still want to be disrupting their aim. So here, you actually want to just jump straight up into the air to continue to create a gap and just gun them down. And this is really easy with a sidearm because they have very good in-air accuracy. So if you get 3 shots on them, you're only going to need 2 in the air. Or unless you get 3 headshots on them, then you're only going to need 1 headshot. So let's say we've wiped them and we're back on B. We have one of our teammates push out to beach to block the spawn there, and then let's say we're just setting up on B heavy. So we're on this half of the map. It's likely that they're going to spawn back on our initial, on alpha spawn, or around A stairs, somewhere around here. So knowing this, now we're going to set up again for another angle that our loadout's going to be effective in. So as we saw earlier, you saw TechDocD, he did challenge from back B special, which is okay. This is a little bit longer than I'd like to challenge from against snipers, but if they're not running snipers, let's say you're playing against a team against 3 shotgunners, this challenge is perfectly fine. This is way longer than any hand cannon's going to hit effectively. It's on the edge of pulse rifles, so if they round this corner, they're probably dead. The time to kill on high impact scouts is really low. It's like 0.8 seconds. It's the same as if you got all body shots with the last word. You've got 4 body shots. So that kind of puts it in perspective as the amount of time they really have to react to you. And that 0.8 seconds, it's normally going to be about half a second before they even realize where you are. Unless they know that you're going to be challenging from that spot to begin with, and then it's in their best interest obviously not to push through the center of the lane, but to push from the edge of the lane here near the little tower spot. This is also a head glitch spot, so it's really easy to challenge someone on cross broken here. This sight line is really nice because if you're a sniper, this is a head glitch here. It's pretty hard to hit if you're not comfortable with you seeing it all the time, and not a lot of people use this. You mostly see it in trials, but it will give you at least 1 shot. So hopefully you take the shot. So this is good for scout, right? If we decide, hey, I think they're going to push through A into top field, then they're going to die, right? Well, let's say that they're going to continue to play passive because they're triple sniper. Well, we don't want to challenge here So they're going to set up top field. They're going to set up on A. They're going to set up around mini room, your water tower. So our first option is immediately off kill. We're going to run through suicide tunnel and set up on tank or set up on pipes. So these two areas here basically cover any sniper line that they're going to have on us. So it's going to cover any push out in the top field. It's going to cover anyone that goes into A, anyone that pushes in the mini room, and anyone that goes all the way down to water tower or low special, bottom field. The issue with tank that you're going to find if you do go there a lot is, well, it's the same issue that you can see here. While you can cover a lot of spaces, you can also get shot from a lot of spaces. So you need to be aware and pick correctly which location you're going to, or coordinate with your teammates who's covering what angle. I would say each person can cover 2 angles pretty effectively. After that, it might get a little dicey just because of how much you're looking around. But I would say you could comfortably cover 2 angles. So let's say that you decide to cover the top field and in A. So your teammate, if they set up on pipes, they can cover in A and mini room. Or maybe he'll cover mini room and bottom field. That leaves your third teammate, hopefully the one that's being the disruptor or the flanker, to basically pick and choose how they want to go about the situation. They can go straight through suicide tunnel. They can go up the half pipe and then challenge mini room, or they can choose to challenge A or push through A to challenge top field. Maybe they're slow off spawn and the disruptor can actually go all the way around to get a flank through A stairs. But as you can see, just setting up on these 2 locations, you can cover any push into this half of the map. And you've effectively cut off a lot of movement options that they have. Really, they only have an opportunity to retreat and give up more space. And if they do retreat from the middle of the map, it's very, very hard to protect yourself because there's no cover back here. If teams decide to stay, they're going to stay in A, right? Yes, all of these sight lines are choke points. But these 3 here are all very close to each other, right? So you can just move back and forth between them to challenge anyone in A, or you can just wait for grenades. Your biggest issue you're going to find is if you do try to push up into these choke points against shotgunners, you're most likely going to die. This isn't an issue on trials because if they do decide to all hang out on A, you can just play point and completely ignore them. This is going to, I mean, this play, a lot of people don't like hearing this, but you don't necessarily have to kill anyone to win a round. That's why the overtime point was created. If teams do want to not play the objective or not play for map control and just play for you making mistakes, then just don't make the mistake. So if we do push out onto pipes and tank, pipes is a little bit riskier with the sidearm as your secondary because, or a little bit less risky with the sidearm as your secondary because these sight lines are longer. This is a longer sight line. This is a longer push into you. Whereas tank, these pushes into you are very short in comparison. And you could potentially get shotgun before you can kill them, especially if you miss a couple shots. Top field's a little bit easier to cover, but this push through the A cubby here, out on the tank, you're pretty vulnerable. Luckily, the advantage of this location is it's really easy to just escape. To push back around through B door onto this corner, and then possibly even just make a big circle here. Go back through suicide. If your third guy does end up trying to go through suicide tunnel, they need to keep in mind that you can't really escape through suicide tunnel because the fact that you can see all the way through it from this location to about there, And if you're here, you can definitely see all the way through it. So that's why it's called suicide. There's no escape. You push through or you die trying. Really, this should only be an angle that you push, not necessarily an angle that you set up on. You don't really gain anything on this map in any mode, really. If you kill someone here and you're all the way on this side, because you have no push into them. The only reason this would be safe is if your teammates immediately collapse or just cut off the res. So if your teammates are here and here and you get a pick and they immediately collapse or just push forward, that should give you enough time to push through tunnel. But if they don't, if they just sit there, then you're going to potentially die while someone sits there and tries to get the res as you try to cover it yourself. This is one of those situations where it's okay to abandon the orb. Let's say we're playing trials. It's okay to abandon this orb if it means that you can actually push around and rejoin your team. But for the most part, hopefully your teammates should be collapsing on that orb, and then you should be there to clean up as a flank by the time they get there. Hopefully they don't lose a 2v2. But you should have enough time to be there relatively quickly, so that way, if they do lose the 2v2 and the remaining enemy players are weak, you should be able to finish them off relatively easy, especially if you have a sniper. Oh, one thing I didn't cover was using class tree perks to complement the loadout weaknesses specifically. So if you know that your loadout is incredibly weak, and I touched on this at the very beginning a little bit. If you know that your loadout is very weak to the very extreme close range or the very extreme long range, you can use your class abilities to kind of make up for that. Most of the time your class abilities are only going to make up for that in the immediate close range. So if you're a Night Stalker, then you want to save your smoke for when you get pushed. You don't want to, and I see this a lot, but a lot of people waste smoke trying to get free kills just because someone shows up on radar. That's bad. If you want to just like try to look for kills or look for priming someone, just use your grenade. Losing your smoke like that makes you incredibly vulnerable, even though you still have Shade Step. If you ever get pushed through cover, smoke is going to be your best friend. It's going to be your only option, really, if you get pushed through cover with a loadout like a Scout Sidearm. And then all you need to do is normally just either throw it at your feet or just stick them with it, and your sidearm can clean them up very, very easily. So that's one way. Another way is Flame Shield. So you know that even though there's a delay on it now, it does do burn still, and it does a lot of damage. So if you prime them with 1 or 2 shots and they happen to push through cover, Flame Shield is either going to result in a kill or a delayed trade. But you're always going to win every double melee. So if they try to melee you twice, you're going to win because you have overshield. So that's a huge advantage, and it's going to make up for the fact that you might get pushed with a shotgun. As a Titan, Storm Fist is your best friend, and because Sunbreaker has built-in solar wind sometimes on the punch, that's going to help out a lot too. That punch can potentially push them away, pushing them out of one-hit KO range. But most importantly, if you're running Striker, which I would highly recommend unless you're sweating and you just can't run Striker, you have to run Breaker. That 158 damage is huge. It means you only have to hit them basically once with anything, and then they're going to die. So if they do end up making the good play and pushing through cover and getting into that one-hit kill range, you can actually trade as opposed to just dying dying for free basically. And that's what you want. If you do end up, if they do end up making the good play and you make a mistake and they close the gap on you, you want the best worst case scenario to happen, which is always a trade. unless you're the flanker. Obviously, if you're a flanker and a trade happens, it's just as bad as if you died for free, because they're just going to get a free res and you're going to be down 50 points. At least in the situation where you're not a flanker and you're team fighting, the fight will go on and it's still 2v2 as opposed to instantly going to be a 3v2. Other ways to cut off long range. I mean, there are really no great ways to use your class abilities to cut off long range. It's really about your positioning. Snipers are the easiest thing to counter in the game because you can just not move to where they're sniping. You can't necessarily not move to locations where someone can push you out of cover, because the way the maps are designed, there's always going to be cover around you. The only maps that there's really no great cover on are maps like First Light or Sky Shock, things like that. Those maps are huge. They're designed for, huge long-range battles. That's just how they are. But all the maps you're normally going to play on, there's always going to be an option to push through cover. So that's why it makes shotgun such a point of contention for a lot of people, because you have to work a lot harder to stop someone from pushing out of cover than you do to stop someone from hard scoping a lane. It's pretty easy to make a sniper useless if you never go into the lanes that they expect you to go into. Whereas a shotgun, it's dangerous all the time. Not only if they're pushing you through cover, but if they're weak, they can defend themselves very, very easily. It's very hard to defend yourself as a sniper unless you're a very good sniper. And there aren't very many of them. There are a few, there's a handful that I would say are very good at defending themselves with a sniper rifle, but even then, if you watch the situations where they successfully defend themselves, it would have been so much easier if they just had a shotgun in the first place. Not to say that you shouldn't snipe, but you do need to be aware of, that you are going to have huge positions where you're going to be incredibly vulnerable. And that's also why the last word is so popular, because it is one of the best, if not at the absolute best, defensive option to protect yourself. All right, so that's pretty much all I had for you guys. As usual, if you want to send me your gameplay, send it to keen@cruciblebootcamp.com. No sixes, rumble, threes, and elimination only. Trials is part of elimination, so they're the same thing. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/cruciblebootcamp. There are reward systems there and all that stuff. You don't have to support, but I want to continue to make the show and obviously make it better. With the big changes to in Rise of Iron with private matchmaking, my model for private tutoring is changing a little bit. Just because I'm going to be able to go into a match and show you exactly what we're talking about, as opposed to kind of drawing it out for you. I'm still going to have that, but I'm going to have the option, to pull you into a game if you're on PS4. If you're not, if you're on Xbox, then I don't have one yet, so I don't have this functionality at the moment. But once I do get one in the future, that'll be there for Xbox as well. And then also, I'm going to be doing some basic angles training for Patreon users. I'm going to have nights where I start up a custom match, bring up to 11 people in there and just walk around and show people, this is what this angle looks like. This is what that angle looks like. This is a path that you can take to challenge here, to challenge there. So that'll be rewards for people that do want to support the show. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it as usual. I will be back on Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Yeah, that's about it. I've been your host, King Koala, and class is dismissed.